TV.
Hi, everyone. Welcome again. Thanks so much for joining me on today's talk about the Villa Romana del Casale in Sicily. A truly wondrous place. Maybe some of you on this talk have been there before and you know how
Ah,
just
it is.
mind-blowing it is. And my name is Melanie Blake. I'm the director of Classical Pursuits and also one of the tour leaders for our Sicily tour, our literary journey through Sicily in November 2025. I'm here today with my colleague Susan, joining us from Korea, and we're really happy to be here with you today. Just a reminder that we are recording today's presentation, and we'll send the recording to all registrants along with some recommendations for further reading. Susan will turn off the recording once I finish the more formal part of the presentation so that we can have an unrecorded informal Q&A. And we invite you all to come on and share your comments and ask your questions. We do have some new people in the audience, so I'll very briefly introduce Classical Pursuits for those who might not know us or who we are. So we organize small group tours for people who are passionate about literature and the arts. And we do a lot of, we do regular online presentations, most of them free, like this one. But our true passion and our real raison d'etre are these small group experiences on our tours or at our summer program at the University of Toronto, because we really love learning in community. And these are ways for people to get together, really dig deep into topics that interest them and learn from each other. We have a lot more planned for 2025. A lot of our 2025 tours are sold out. We do have a few spaces left on our Quebec City tour. We have some spaces left on this Sicily tour. And also we have a handful of spaces on our Ganges River Cruise tour. So all of these are three very different destinations. We're happy to tell you more about any of those, and I'll put our contact information up at the end. We also have our summer program at the University of Toronto. A big sales going on right now for that, and that ends Friday. If you're interested in joining one of our Toronto seminars, don't wait because some of them are almost sold out, and the sale itself will end on Friday. And again, I'll give you all the contact information at the end if you have more questions or need to reach us. All right, so let's get started. We're going to again, our journey in Sicily is going to be shaped by literature, but also by art and architecture. We see here one of the temples at Agrigento in the Valley of the Temples, and by a true highlight of the 2022 tour that we did, and I know it will be a highlight of the 2025 tour as well, the Villa Romana del Casale. And I'm going to answer a few basic questions about this villa, and then we're going to take a virtual tour of it. So first, where is it? As you can see, it's in the central part of Sicily. Its location would have so there was a Roman road that connected what's now Agrigento. You can see that here. Oops, let me get my cursor up there. You can see Agrigento here on the coast. Sorry, my cursor's all over the place. Agrigento on the coast, and then a road connecting Agrigento, and a road network connecting Agrigento and Catania in the east here. And the Villa Romana del Casale was likely off a secondary route that connected to this main road between Agrigento and Catania. And just I'm going to zoom in a little bit more so you can see it more closely. And you can see part of this Roman road network in this image I have now on screen of the Tabula Putergiana. A tabula is is a copy of a cop. This tabula or map shows the network of public roads in the Roman Empire. This parchment copy dates from about 1200 Common Era, but it's thought to be a copy of a document that was much older, maybe from the 5th century Common Era. And this location, of course, tells us a lot about what is the Villa Romana del Casale, and also about what is the Roman villa as a concept. So villas were meant to be retreats from the stress and pressure of city life, right? Nothing new there. And the Romans called this negotium, this pressure of city life. Villas instead were associated with osium, which could mean something like restful leisure. And some villas were meant to be kind of country retreats, more oriented toward rest and pleasure. They would have some of the features that you'll see in a moment, like peristyles where people could walk or rest in the shade. They would have reception areas, baths, mosaic. They would be decorated with marble and mosaics, just like domestic structures in cities. And they would have similar amenities. Some, including the Villa Romana del Casale, would be fed. The water supply would come in from aqueducts. And the villas of Hadrian and Nero were two of the kind of most luxurious of these country villas that were known in the Roman Empire. Other villas were more rustic, didn't have as many amenities, and they were basically working farms. But I wouldn't, I know, and I'm just speaking to you about my own experiences in traveling in Sicily and learning about this villa. I'm not a scholar of the Roman Empire or the Roman Republic, but my understanding is that the line is not super hard and not always very hard and fast. So the Villa Romana del Casale was very luxurious, as we'll see, but it was also most likely situated on a latifundium. And latifundia were landed estates that produced agricultural goods like olive oil and grain. And especially in the later part of the Roman Empire, went from when the villa dates, like the 4th century CE, these agricultural products from Sicily were very important to the empire. And they, especially in the later part of the empire, they were often worked by slaves or tenant farmers who were called coloni. And I should say, so this is a reconstruction not of the Villa Romana del Casale, but of what one of these typical large country villas would look like. And you'll be able to see how some of these same features would be present in the Villa Romana del Casale. The villa was most likely the permanent residence of its owner. So it would be a farm, a working farm that produced agricultural goods. It would also be an administrative center where the dominus or the landowner would receive custom clients and in his role as the patron. And they were meant to impress often, and we're going to see even all these centuries later, you'll see just how much just how luxurious this villa was. I'll tell you a little bit more about the mosaics shortly, just to kind of sticking on the concept of Roman domestic architecture and the villas as a whole. I know this cross section is blurry, but it was one of the more detailed ones that gave you a sense of what's under those red tiled roofs. And you'll see some of the same features in the Villa Romana del Casale. So this is a much smaller structure, more like an urban structure, but it would have some of the same features, like a central peristyle, smaller cubiculum, bedrooms, and service rooms, and you'll see some of these same structures come out. Just to give you a just give you a the Villa Romana del Casale has not been kind of reconstructed or rebuilt, but just to give you a sense of a villa that has. This is from the Getty Villa in Malibu near Los Angeles. I went there at the Thanksgiving weekend. It's it's a reconstruction of Hadrian's Villa and an art museum, and it is was very happily not damaged by the terrible fires that happened in LA in January. Um, and it is just incredible. If you ever are in the LA area, I highly recommend it. And you can see that there's different marbles from all over the Roman Empire that decorate the floor, um, and the walls. The use of granite pillars, and these things are still evident even in the um, not reconstructed Villa del Casale, of course. And this is an exterior part of the Getty Villa, with this with these colonnades, the peristyle, and you'll see and with a central fountain, and you'll see the same type of structure in the Villa Romana del Casale. I'm gonna show this map now briefly, but we're gonna come back to it throughout our virtual tour to help orient us, just to give you a sense of what we're going to do. We'll start in the entrance area, which includes an entrance gate with an atrium, and we'll pass through. Um, we'll Oops, sorry, my cursor's a little stuck there. There we go. Oh, there it is. Okay, we'll pass through the tablinum into the peristyle. We'll visit the Hall of the Great Hunt, which is all mosaic. The pictures don't do it justice, but I think you'll get a sense of just how incredible it is. The basilica and some of the private parts of the Villa Romana del Casale. All right. One more kind of really basic question before our tour. Who lived there? And the short answer is nobody knows. Nobody knows for sure. Historians don't know who the owner of this villa was. Many scholars believe that the mosaic that I have up on screen now shows the domina, or lady of the manor, along with her two children at either side, and they are flanked by two slaves. This mosaic is at the entrance to the baths, and the slaves are holding equipment that would be used to take a bath. So this could be the domina. That's a kind of a generally accepted theory, but it's still not known who owned this. Maybe someday archaeologists, historians will find out. I don't know. Historians, though, do believe that based on how big and opulent the villa was, that it belonged to a member of the senatorial class, or maybe even a member of the Roman imperial family. Um, Even some various emperors have been suggested. And another clue, and I'll point out a few of these as we go along. The villa has both kind of structures and motifs that are more associated with the military, and others that are more associated with civilian life. And because of this, some scholars suggest that, and forgive my pronunciation again, I'm not a scholar of ancient Rome, but that Cionius Rufius Volusiano is one possibility for the owner. And this is because he had positions of both military and civil responsibility, which in the third in this villa dates from around 320 Common Era, so the 4th century, around 320. And at that time in the Roman Empire, people did not have both responsibilities, both military and civilian responsibilities. He was kind of an exception. He had served both as a prefect of Rome, for example, and had a military position in the Praetorian Guard. So that was unusual. But again, this is just a theory. Do the presence of both military and civilian motifs and architecture elements make him the owner? No, it's just a theory that's put forward. There's no direct evidence. There is evidence, though, for a lot of people can know a lot about what this person was like, even though they don't know who he was or who the family was. And I'm going to quote from Renee Sandel's truly excellent website, one of the most comprehensive sources of information today on the internet about this villa. And I'll make sure to include that in the resources. And Renee writes about this owner. He was very wealthy and powerful. He had property in Africa. He made money from the capture of wild animals for the Venaciones in the Colosseum and elsewhere. He was fond of hunting. He was a lover and patron of music and poetry. He used leaves of ivy as personal or family symbols. He was almost certainly pagan, and last but not least, he supported the Factio Prasina in the races at the Circus Maximus. How do we know all this? Well, you'll find out as we take our tour through the villa. And one final note before we move ahead. In later years, a village did kind of grow up around this villa, and the site remained inhabited through the Byzantine and Arab periods that would later follow in Sicily. Sicily was, those of you who saw my talk in, I think it was January, know that just huge. Sicily was subject to rule and trade with and influenced by a very large number of groups of people from all over the Mediterranean. So it was a Byzantine and later Arab village, but it was abandoned after a landslide in the 12th century. Large parts of the villa were covered, and people set up a new town in nearby Piazza Armerina, which is still a town today. All right, let's turn to our virtual tour, and I'm going to rely on the knowledge of our local guide in Sicily, Giorgio, an architect and teacher, and also, of course, and there's Giorgio there, looking very, very stylish at the beginning of our visit to the villa in 2022, and of course, I'm going to use my own experience of visiting the villa, the work of Renee Sandal, who I mentioned earlier, and also the University of Pennsylvania Museum is a good resource for more information about this villa. All right, so here's us. Here's our group in Sicily heading up to the site before the official entrance. And there's a number of outbuildings or partially ruined outbuildings that are connected to the villa that haven't been formally excavated. But there are still, it was wonderful to be in the Sicilian countryside in that beautiful sunshine. And oops, here's the map again. As I mentioned before, like any visitor, we're going to start in the public areas and work our way into the public areas like the entrance area, the peristyle, and work our way into the Great Hall, the Basilica, and some of the private apartments. So if you traveled a long way to get to this villa, you may have wanted to make a stop in the bathroom when you arrived. And as you can see, there is a bathroom kind of right at this latrine here is this, right at the front entrance area. This would have been a public area. This would have been covered or roofed over, but the roof covers were lost. And a lot of the original latrine covers were lost too. And then you would pass through a 3-part arch, which also doesn't exist today. But that arch, that 3-part arch, and you think of other arches like that, like arches in Rome, copy arches in Paris, like the Arc de Triomphe, of course, is a very famous one. These 3-part triumphal arches, they definitely have a a military feel, and communicate very clearly the power and status of the owner. So you'd pass through these arches into this entrance area, which would include an atrium. It would include fountains. So one of the side fountains is shown here, and it would be, most of the frescoes have disappeared. It would be, but the walls would have been painted with frescoes, and you can see a remnant of one there with different motifs in it. And as I mentioned, there were a lot of military motifs that were present. Nothing that unfortunately tells us again who the owner was, but motifs that show us that this was connected to someone who had some, who himself had some connections to the military. And here's another, again, this atrium would have all been covered. And you can see some of the pillars there, but a lot of that has been lost. And this was a public area, but that also had passage to some of the non-public areas like the baths. And there wouldn't have been so many mosaics here. You can see there's more a stone floor in this area. And again, here you can see another view of what would have the atrium, with there's some semicircular fountains on the side. So people would wait here to be received, right? It was a place that would offer shade, a more comfortable place to wait while they waited to see the Dominus. If you were important enough to make, so most people didn't get any further than that. That was it. You didn't make the cut. But if you were important enough to get past the atrium, you would then go into the tablinum, which is a room for welcoming guests. And here we start to see more mosaics. And so a lot of the mosaics are geometric patterns like you see here, but we can see quite damaged, but we can still see this mosaic that featured two rows of people. And up top here, they're holding laurels and torches, which could be seen as symbols of welcome, showing either the returning Dominus or visitors that they're welcome in this place. There we go. And this is just another, so this tablinum leads into the peristyle, and I'll show a larger view of that in a moment, but I just wanted to show you here, and again, we really start to get into these incredible mosaics that line the peristyle. So the peristyle is the central garden and kind of the heart, the center of the villa. And from this place, and I'll just show you where it is on the map again quickly. There we go. So we've come in through the atrium, we've passed through the tablinum with the people holding the laurels, and we've come in here. We really come into the center of the villa, and we'll have mosaics and this shaded walkway all around. And you can start to get a sense of just how extensive and how detailed these mosaics are. There's about 3,500 square meters of mosaics in this villa. And here, so here's a view zooming out of the peristyle, and it would have this fountain in the center. And the fountain itself is it's not a reconstruction. That is the original fountain in this villa. And this again would be an area where people would wait here to be received. I don't have a picture of it, but also in the peristyle would be the lararium. This is the shrine for the gods of the house. It would also be decorated with mosaics. Sometimes these mosaics would be covered with sand to protect them. But you may remember I mentioned before that scholars and archaeologists think that this Dominus was a pagan. Um, and he and his family would have a lararium for the house gods. So you are waiting to be seen by the Dominus. You still have one more step to go. This is the Hall of the Great Hunt. Now, fortunately, you'd have a lot to occupy your time while you're waited. Because you would be at probably one of the single most impressive mosaics in the in this villa, and definitely one of the most impressive extant mosaics today of anywhere in the world. The Villa Romana del Casale really is the most preserved and complete presentation of mosaics that are still in situ, right? Still in the villa of anywhere in the world today. It really is a unique place. So this Hall of the Great Hunt, again, this is partly why scholars think that Sionius Rufus Volusanius may have been the owner of the villa. As prefect of Rome, he would have been in charge of capturing animals in Africa that would be brought back to Rome for the circus games there. And at the very least, if it wasn't him, scholars think that this Dominus also held properties in Africa. Of course, various parts of northern Africa were part of the Roman Empire at different times, and he would be familiar with the different animals there. So you can see, and I'll show another view. One tricky thing is just because of, the mosaics need to be protected, so you are up on walkways when you're visiting them, which makes it sometimes hard to get pictures from the best angle, but that's why you need to come in person to see them. But you can see here some animals, people with shields, and the animals are shown being hunted. I'll go back to this other slide in a second. They're shown being hunted here. Like here, I have a more close up of some bucks or serfs being hunted. Um, also animals. You can see here. Here's an elephant. This is another section of the same hall, just another section. You can see an elephant being loaded into a ship. It would be captured. You can see a dolphin here, or maybe a dolphin, maybe some other type of fish, or sea animal. And these animals would be captured and sent back to Rome. I'll just give you one more look at that. Again, I know it's hard to capture as a whole, but it's really an extraordinary sight, and just see the whole process from the different hunters in the woods through to transporting the animals, just portrayed with such vividness and animation, even now, so many centuries later. And so you're waiting in the Hall of the Great Hunt, and finally you make it into the basilica shown here. This would be the main audience hall or main reception room for the villa, and of course later the word would be used by Christians. We know that all across time, right? There's taking of names and moving them into a new context. And as Renee Sandal tells us, it's a classic basilica centenaria, which means 100 Roman. It's 100 Roman feet long. This is in the metric system. This is just under 30 meters long. And this would not have. I know the floor is badly damaged, and you can't walk on it in the villa, but you can. The floors here would not have been mosaics. They would have been marble slabs. And there would have been mosaics made of glass decorating the walls. So all of this would have been would have been decorated with mosaics, and there would have been most likely a wooden roof, as is now. The roof is a pretty recent addition. Um, I think maybe even in the past 20 years. Okay, I wanted to share before we end and open it up to questions. I wanted to share a couple of other rooms and mosaics with you. The first one is the Hall of Orpheus. I know this mosaic is very fragmented, but I hope we can still get a sense of its beauty. We have the mosaic of Orpheus on the floor. This statue is the statue of Apollo, and if I'm not mistaken, it is original to the villa. And so Orpheus is the Thracian musician, prophet, and poet. Thracians were a name given to uh, a group of people in what's now southeastern Europe. And the legend for Orpheus is that his music charmed all living things, and even non-living things like stones. And of course, he's associated with lots of legend. We have like Orpheus and Eurydice, where he goes down into the underworld in search of his wife Eurydice. Many other legends associated with Orpheus as well. And having this mosaic here in this room would attest to the owner's would say, I'm a man of culture and knowledge. I'm a man who loves poetry and music, and would again would reflect the Dominus's interests and also show his social status. The function of this room is not entirely clear. Some scholars think that perhaps this villa was occupied actually by two couples, the Dominus and his wife, and then the son of the Dominus and his wife. And if that was the case, they think that this room may have been the audience hall for the son. So the Dominus had the basilica as his audience hall, and perhaps the son had this room, the Orpheus room. It was it's scholars they pretty sure it was a public room. They just don't quite know what its function was. And another, oops, I skipped a slide there, I think. Let me go back. Yes. Okay. And another room that's sort of a parallel to the Hall of Orpheus is the Hall of Orion, a kind of a companion room in terms of its theme, where we have Orpheus, who is charming everything on land, and Arion, who's charming everything in the sea. And I'm going to quote Renee Sandal's account of Arion, a poet from Corinth. So and you can see him here riding a dolphin in the center. And I'll briefly quote his story as told by Renee Sandal. So Arion decides to attend a musical competition in Sicily. He won the competition, but on return from Sicily, the avaricious sailors plotted to kill him and steal the rich prizes he carried home. Arion was given the choice of suicide, allowing a proper burial on land, or being thrown in the sea to perish. Neither perspective appealed to him, and he asked for permission to sing a last song to buy himself some time. Playing his kitara, Arion sang a song of praise to Apollo, the god of poetry, and his song attracted a number of dolphins around the ship. At the end of the song, Arion threw himself into the sea rather than being killed, but one of the dolphins saved his life and carried him to safety. He then continued to Corinth by another way, unclear what way, and arrived before the sailors were able to catch up with him and kill him. When he got back to Corinth, the king didn't quite believe his fantastical story. The sailors themselves believed that Arion was dead in the sea, and when the sailors got to Corinth, they told the king that Arian had decided to stay in Italy as opposed to returning to Corinth in Greece. Um, the king then understood that the story was true, and he punished the sailors with death. So the poet survived, charming all the dolphins who came to save him. And you can see here there's sea motifs like sea snakes. We can see representations of water, perhaps sirens or mermaids, but also there's a tiger, and so some land animals too. Just one of the clearly a very well preserved mosaic, and even even from here, I think we can appreciate its beauty and detail. And you enter this room kind of appropriately enough from this atrium, which is the atrium of the fishing cupids. You can see cupids here in their boats, and they are fishing. Again, a really well preserved mosaic that it's just I think the dust does collect on these mosaics. They are exposed to the elements in some ways. Some of them. Um, so I know the colors look a little faded, but the colors are still really bright. If you get I think for when these are photographed for books and things, perhaps they're often very gently wiped, so the colors really shine through. Just a couple more that I think are really fun. So this mosaic is in a room that's meant for children, perhaps a cubiculum, a bedroom, and it shows miniature circus races. And so this is kind of a children's version of a larger mosaic showing these kind of games and races that are in the palestra or the gym of the villa, because it of course it has a gym. And so but this is a kid's version of that, and you can see that the different figures here are wearing they're representing different teams or factions that are represented by different colors. We have green, white, red here. So that's also a very well preserved mosaic. And kind of continuing with athletic, we'll end with more athletics, where we will step into another cubiculum or a bedroom. You can see we're in the hallway now, and you can see here in the hallway, right, there was more mosaics with geometrical patterns and goulish, I think they're called, the kind of interlocking patterns of different bands, frescoes on the walls, which are largely gone now, and this really interesting cubiculum. So let's see it up close. This one also so beautifully preserved. And these are women participating in various athletic activities and athletic contests, or women playing a ball game. Someone has won a competition. She's just being awarded with laurels. Here we have a women with discus. And women would participate in some sports like long jump, discus, and running, and also ball games. This was a known activity for women in various stages of the Roman Empire. In the Roman Republic and the earlier part of the empire, so again, we're around 320 Common Era, getting toward the end of the Roman Empire in 476. Earlier, women actually also competed as gladiators, but that was outlawed around 200 Common Era. So I'm not sure to what extent women participated publicly in athletic games in this later part of the empire, but they did participate wearing these kind of breast binders and a sort of loincloth. And again, just a really like the detail is really incredible. Oh, sorry, one more, one more. I forgot. We ending with another type of maybe athletic activity. This was from a curriculum that scholars think was the bed, perhaps was the bedroom of the Dominus, or perhaps the sun, if that was the case, with an erotic scene for the bedroom. And I know that it, again, it's you can't get super up close in because they're protected. But when you're seeing these in person, you just I know this is a little bit blurry, but the detail is just really comes out. Um, and the skill, and these mosaics would have been made from sometimes glass paste, like I mentioned, that was often used on the walls, or stone, marble as well. Marble was used to make the mosaics, and the mosaics. So all these uh, incredible mosaics in the Villa Romana del Casale were made by craftsmen from North Africa, and they reflect this style that's also often present in North Africa, and craftsmen from various parts of North Africa were well known for their mosaics. And even today, some of you were with me and classical pursuits in Morocco, and we saw uh, we saw mosaics, the techniques used to make mosaics, which in some ways are very similar to the techniques that would have been used on these mosaics. And just one last picture of just gorgeous, gorgeous Sicily. This was from our 2022 tour. A beautiful part of Italy. I really hope that you'll join me from November 6th to 27th, 2025. Before we open it up, I do want to acknowledge the many sources that I mentioned, especially Renee Sundal's site, the University of Pennsylvania Museum. Those were both fundamental. So the different sources and my different image sources. And again, please join us for what's going to be a really terrific tour, a great time to go to southern Italy. And if you have some questions or you'd like more information, my colleague Celeste at Worldwide Quest is ready to help you out. Her email is celeste@worldwidequest.com. You can also give Worldwide Quest a call. They have a toll-free number, 1-800-387-1483. And we'll make sure that you get all this information as well. So we had a great time. It was so fun, and I'd love in 2022, and I'd love to see you in 2025. All right, I will open it up to Q&A. So I'm going to turn off